And we're live.
Hey
everyone, my name is Anthony Johnson, the founder of 21 Studios and the 21 Convention. I'm here live today on YouTube with Rollo Tomassi of The Rational Male at therationalmale.com, author of the stellar, hot-selling, best-selling book series, The Rational Male, part 1, 2, and now 3. Rollo is also a confirmed speaker for the 21 Convention 2017 10-year anniversary live event coming up this September in Orlando, Florida. You can get tickets at the21convention.org or on his site as well. Rollo, thanks for coming on the show once again.
Always. Thanks for having me again.
Yeah, fuck yeah, man. Probably my favorite guest of 2017.
Yeah.
So it's a blast having you on. Yeah. Your last podcast, too, killed it. It's got like 12,000 views now. So it's really good for a podcast for us.
And, you know, Mark Baxter is a good friend of mine as well. And it seems like every time I go on, it's like that's the most popular one. So I'm glad to.
Did you just
I'm glad you all like it.
Yeah. I just tweeted actually it looks like he did a new podcast with you. Did that just happen the other day?
Which one?
Mark Baxter. You put out a tweet today for the new book for him, or your book on his site.
Yeah, but he's been nice enough to sort of buff me out for my the new book. A lot of people are helping me out with it too. That's one great thing about being in the manosphere is that you put something new out and everybody pretty much has your back, and
dude, totally.
They help you promote too. So.
The other day when you asked me actually on Twitter, I was kind of laughing. I was like, of course. You asked me to do like a blog post about it, and I'm thinking like, holy shit, I'm gonna do a lot more than that.
Yeah.
So speaking of that, you just put out a new book literally 3 days ago. I think it came out 3-4 days ago.
Yep.
Yep.
I just live. I went live on Wednesday or Thursday. I can't remember.
I think Wednesday night.
Yeah, Wednesday afternoon.
Yep. I'm about 30 pages into it, so I'm not too far into it yet. But I was really fucking excited to get it. And later today, I'll be sitting down and over tomorrow digging through it and chunking into it. And so the name of the book is actually The Rational Male, Volume 3, Positive Masculinity. But the original title was actually subtitle was going to be The Red Pill. Can you open up talking about that a little bit and why you transitioned to positive masculinity instead?
In the introduction part of the book, I go into just sort of my thought process of coming up with the third book. I didn't really set out to create a series of books when I first put the first one out. It was just something that I felt that I needed to do. It's like I'm not like really a professional writer, I guess. I have other things that keep me occupied, but I felt like I had a book in me, I guess. And so I put that out, and I tried to cram as much into it as I possibly could. And just as things went, I had a really positive response to that. And a lot of people have been, they've called me the godfather of the red pill. They've said, you are the red pill, and on the subreddits, the red pill Reddit subreddits. And if you go and you look at the sidebar, my stuff is the most linked to stuff on that particular forum. But like I said, I didn't set out to do that. I just kind of put out what I felt like I had in me. And I think I kind of understand how writers feel now. Like if you feel like you have a book in you, it's like, or if there's a book that that's not available that you think should be available, well, write it, and go and put it out. And that's really been my approach for, all three of these books. And so right now I sort of consider the first book like the core kind of understanding, or the core rule set, I guess.
The fundamentals.
Yeah, exactly. And then so everything else is built off of that. So then there's preventive medicine, and now there's positive masculinity. And I just felt like I when I first set out, I noticed that a lot of what the red pill as a terminology has become has sort of been appropriated by a lot of different ideologies and different people with different agendas. And
I was thinking about that reading through the introduction, and obviously the name title or the title change you made to the final one. Yeah, it's been appropriated by not only the Cassie Jays and the documentaries and stuff like that, but even like politics and even people I like. Never mind people I don't.
Yeah. Well, it's like I see it used in so many different aspects. Because people want to say, well, it's whatever is truth to them. And so then they go and say, well, I've been red pilled. And it's like, okay, well, what are you really talking about? And it's like, well, I'm alt-right, or I'm MGTOW, or I'm, whatever.
Yeah.
And to me, the red pill has always been about intersexual dynamics, and that's where it started. And
Yeah, it's important to keep. I think it's really important to keep clarifying is that it started in this sphere, the sphere that you are leading, intentionally or unintentionally.
Well, the manosphere has sort of evolved into different aspects of it, and in some ways that's good. And in some ways it's kind of like, well, is it really related? Is it not related? Because I'm always of the opinion that the red pill needs to be fundamentally amoral, a-religious, apolitical, and it needs to be based on objective truth and objective conversations. Really, testing ideas. It's really in the book I describe the red pill as a praxology, and what that is it's just sort of um, an understanding. So it's like what I call a loose science. And
yeah, I saw that. Yeah, I was reading through that part today.
yeah, and it comes down to guys coming together and talking about their experiences, talking about what has worked for them. Whether that's in the realm of personal development, or if it's in the realm of picking up girls, or living with women, and basically understanding women from that point of view. And now we have a large worldwide consortium of guys who have come
when you
together to share
say
experience.
when you say understanding women too, you mean that like globally throughout your life, not just like specific to
Yeah.
pickup, seduction, getting
Yeah.
laid.
Well, that's I and again I in the introduction I say this is that I really feel that the red pill from intersexual dynamics is concerned. I really feel that it's open source, and I think that every man's experience really needs to be added to the larger gestalt of the red pill. And so guys who are in Mumbai or Japan or wherever all over the world can come together and share their experiences and say, well, here in Brazil, my experience is this, and here in Kentucky my experience is this. And so people come together and we sort of see commonalities in women's behavior and female nature, and we come to connecting dots. As I say, I'm very fond of calling what I do really is just connecting dots. And a lot of people, a lot of people will tell me, like, I'll get emails from guys and they'll say, what, I feel like I have known this shit all along, but I've never had it spelled out for me. I've never had it articulated for me. And I think if I have a strength, it's in my ability to articulate what guys have, either suspected in the back of their heads, or maybe they're thinking about now. And
for me, it was just like that too. Like connecting the dots was almost immediately what I felt and articulated in my own head reading your book, the first one, for the first time back in the summer last year. And yeah, after being in the PUA community for so long and approaching like thousands of times, my thinking was like loosely geared in this direction, so kind of like purple pill. But then you tightened it up by spelling all this stuff out and articulating it. Yeah, it was life changing for me, like some of the others.
I think that there's sort of a misconception about the red pill, and that it's just a bunch of guys, or it's just a bunch of pickup artists trying to figure out how to better get laid.
Bunch of angry, bitter men.
Bitter men. Yes, but I really think that critics will constantly say that you guys think about sex too much. You guys are just sex obsessed, and that's all it's really about. And really, it's much more than that. And when you can understand the different, sub aspects of the red pill when it comes to, well, maybe you're involved in a relationship, maybe you're married, maybe you're working with women, maybe there's, I was talking to Mark Baxter about just the larger scope of the red pill when, we just had that incident with that female FBI agent who decided she wanted to run off and go get married.
Yeah, I saw that.
And it's like, you want to know how large a scale, intersexual dynamics goes. Well, that's national security. So if you're just going to say, oh, it's just the guys that are, interested in just getting laid and trying to find out, how best to tweak their game so that they can get a same night lay, that's not what it's about at all. And I think that's what really scares a lot of, social justice warriors and a lot of people who would otherwise, blue pill guys who would like to say that that's all it's about, because it's not. It's so much larger than that.
Well, I have an interesting short story about this. I think you'd really be, I don't know about excited to hear, but interested to hear. Recently, about maybe a week and a half ago, not that long ago, one of our most popular speakers, alumni anyway, James Marshall, he was doing a live Q&A, on Facebook with his audience and stuff like that, and his fans. And someone brought up feminism and feminists and how they're critical of PUAs sometimes, stuff like that. And he pointed out that he had basically never taken any heat, in spite of being very popular. Runs a big YouTube channel, a great company. They're very well known. And he couldn't really wrap his head around why he hadn't been criticized so sharply, unlike other PUAs, unlike the red pill, et cetera, et cetera. And what I immediately thought of what I pointed out to him is that feminists don't see seduction and PUA coaching as fundamentally threatening to the feminine imperative, which he doesn't quite grasp, in spite of being, I think, legitimately a very good seducer and a good teacher. So I think, to me, that highlighted the difference between the red pill and the PUA stuff, is that's not really seen as a huge threat, unlike the red pill, unlike the manosphere more broadly, because it's addressing fundamentals and it's hitting on everything, not just going out picking up women.
Well, I think that one of the reasons that I get the same, just for the record here, I don't have too many feminists hit my site or my comments and say you're wrong and fuck you, and I don't get too much flack from feminists altogether. But I think probably one of the reasons, for why that is that I think that, and I should extend this to red pill women, or people, women who like to identify themselves as red pill women. I think that they believe that we are doing their work for them, in that we're, feminism has been, defined by myself and Harti or Albrosi as being, the ultimate unleashing of women's sexuality while maximally restraining men's sexuality.
Yeah.
And I think that in
that was a big epiphany for me, by the way.
And relating red pill truths to men, we're really not, expressing anything that, uneducated, uninitiated blue pill guys aren't getting from women anyways. Because like when we talked last time, we talked about open hypergamy and just how it's something that's out in the wild right now. We see commercials, we see media, we see movies built all around this. And it's almost insulting, I think. I mean, if I was a blue pill guy and I was waking up to this, I'd feel insulted about that, because it's like, well, here are these women who are saying, you know what, we're going to follow the Sheryl Sandberg plan for hypergamy, and we're going to fuck all the bad boys we can possibly do. And then right when it's time to cash out of the sexual marketplace, when we're 29 years old, you chumps are going to be there and you're going to love us. And because we're going to tell you that nothing's sexier, and you're going to, once we've hit our epiphany phase, we're going to need you to be, the clueless idiots that you really are. And they're happy to flaunt that in the faces of these guys, and they're expected to take it. And I think that the red pill, we're doing, we're just guys giving these dudes the same message that they're, not directly, but certainly indirectly getting from feminists and the feminine imperative.
What this brings to mind is in the opening of at least the third book, one of the opening pages, and as well as maybe others. I've definitely seen you say it before. It's like the Matrix quote. I think it's a direct quote pulled from the Matrix. Why do my eyes hurt? Well, you've never used them before.
Never used them before. I use that in every one of my books. That was my tag signature when I was a moderator for the So Suave forums.
Well, I think that's why,
why do you keep saying that? Well, that was just my tagline from my signature when I was a moderator.
Well, what it reminds me of, though, is that guys, experiencing this from feminists and from women and all that, they're not quite like they're confronting it, but they don't really know what they're looking at, I think. Right. At least that would have been my case before I found your work. Like I would have had like an inkling, or whatever you call it, confronting this stuff, but didn't quite know what to make of it and what the hell I was looking at.
Right.
So I think that's what your book does really well.
I agonized over putting this into. I have a post called "Betas in Waiting" that defines all of this, and it's one of my more popular posts. And I was really debating on putting it in this third book, but I just didn't have space. I was pushing, close to 400 pages as it was. So, but yeah, I think that's one of my more seminal posts, because it outlines exactly what I just said. Is like, there's these guys who spend their entire lives just in the dark and waiting up until the point where, women are ready for them. I mean, the women will even go so far as to say, well, if we're both single when you're 30, then we can get married. And it's just like,
Or 40. Yeah, it's a whole fucking
yeah,
joke. I've seen
yeah,
it in sitcoms
exactly.
and stuff.
And it's so,
It's sick.
it's so insulting. And it's like, I mean, from
Yep.
the red pill, I also go into the red pill lens when I'm in this
Yeah.
new book. And it, you know, from a red pill perspective, and you're looking at this, you're like, why aren't these guys like seeing this? But you know, but they're happy to have the play. They're happy to get to that point where there's like, okay, I built myself up, and we've been playing by the first set of rules or the first, set of books,
Old book, yeah.
and yeah, and now I'm finally getting, my ships come in, and all my, my waiting and my perseverance is going to cash, is finally going to cash in.
And she's been out riding the cock carousel, accumulating relationship trauma
Right.
for 20
Well,
years.
and then, and I know that the predictable, counter to that is like, well, not all women are like that. Not all women are going to do that.
Yep.
And it's like, well, yeah, but that's so common, and it's such a generality right now. I mean,
Yep.
when you have women of the status of, the CEO of Facebook, Sheryl Sandberg, basically outlining, and endorsing and promoting it with young women, that her plan for hypergamy, that is the generality, and that's what's happening right now. And I also go into in the new book, I also go into how that is sort of transitioning into what I call open cuckoldry.
Yeah. Yep. This talk about betas and waiting and that specific post, it makes me think that you have like a special category, unbeknownst to you, of like posts that are just so abrasive that they attract like all that attention. And I think that's one of them. Oh yeah. So what it reminds me of is that you have a special category of posts. Is what I wanted to say. That and you retweeted this a little while ago. That doesn't just take the sunglasses off of somebody and show them the world. It peels their fucking eyelids off. And I think that's one of those posts that does that when you hit on it that deep.
Well, I had a right before I published, I kind of had to really hunker down and take a week off from the blog so that I could take care of all the particulars of doing self-publishing. But the last post that I put out before the book announcement was
safety net, right?
Yeah, this confidence in the safety net. And guys have told me in the past that because they have this red pill awareness, they they feel more confident, and they feel like they've got a safety net, and they feel like they can actually experiment. And I want to also say that they also feel like they've got a sense of abundance, in that if something fucks up with the relationship that they're in, that they know they're going to be okay, because they have the instruction set, or they have like the idea and the information and the education to to rebuild their lives if they had to, or to be a little bit more adventurous, even with the women that they feel like they're, even blue pill guys who feel like their woman is their dominant authority in their lives. Once you educate those dudes and you say, hey, you know what, here's why your wife is the way she is. And then they have a little bit more fearlessness to go and experiment and to push the envelope a little bit and test things out. And then that leads to more, testing and experimentation and stuff. And again, it comes back to, it not just being all about sex. It's all about experimenting with intersexual dynamics. And sometimes that takes place in, the worst of marriages. And sometimes that takes place with, Christian McQueen out in fucking France right now, sitting on the, this goes out to you, motherfucker. Because, I've been looking at some of his stuff because he's in Cannes, France right now. And he's kind of doing some live tweets. And at the same time, I got Goldman, who's on his, his, North American tour right now. And I see all this stuff coming back, but, it gives guys like that, the license, I guess, to go out and experiment and then get back to us with, that information. And so it can be, pickup artists, and it can be guys who are in a good marriage or a bad marriage, or it can be guys who are divorced and getting back in the game. And it's all, I'm really about the idea that the red pill is open source. And I think that every guy has, even gay guys have something to say, about, what it is that masculinity means to them, because they're men.
Yep. Well, Jack Donovan is like is a key figure there, right? Yep.
Yeah, he's speaking with us, right? He's going to be at the 21.
Damn right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm talking through email. We're getting his flight set up and all that. So good to go.
Nice.
Yep. So let's shift gears a little bit. Right at the outset of the book, obviously, I know this, personally, just through talking to you and then Andrew. But you actually asked Andrew, the private man, Andrew Hansen, to write the foreword to your book,
Mm-hmm.
and I think he agreed, but then was unable to due
Yeah.
to
He
time between when he died.
Yeah, I hit him up, and I've talked to Andrew on several occasions, and then the
Yeah.
last time I talked to him, um, I when he had put that one post up about how he was, sort of in his last days, I called him up and I said, "Hey, man, I just want to let you know, you don't really get a chance to talk to somebody who's right about to die, at least in
Yep.
my experience. There are very few people that I have been able to say, vaya con Dios, and
Yep.
so I talked to him a little bit, and I said, hey, if you have the energy and you can do it, I would love for you to, write the intro to the next book. And that was back in, I think it was in March,
Mm-hmm.
and I didn't realize just how aggressive the cancer was back then. And he gave no sign whatsoever, even right up until the end. Because I mean, you were at his going away party,
Dude, I was
and
at his house like a week before he died.
the guy was very vibrant and very,
Yep.
alive and very with it. And it's just like within the space of 4 or 5 days, he was gone.
Yep. I actually wanted
And
to comment that, I saw him so close to when he died, and that positive, I don't call it a positive mindset, a positive sense of self or sense of life he had
mhm,
it was there all the way to the end. And I
yeah,
have no doubt it was
well,
terrifying to face death
my
like that,
um,
but he was,
my idea for the book, anyways, was getting him to sort of, I don't want to say eulogize himself, but to sort of just, give himself a memorial so that, from his own words would have been great. So,
yeah.
but unfortunately that didn't happen. And so then I took it upon myself to dedicate the book to Andrew, who is the private man, or was the private man. And his
Yep.
blog's still up there. It's, if anybody wants to, go have a look at it. And I'm
Yep.
not going to say I agreed with everything he said. I mean, a lot of the stuff, he was very enamored by a lot of
Yep.
purple pill stuff too. But
Hmm.
I think that what he did and just the way he lived his life was, you know, something to something to aspire to. I mean, that guy was, you know,
I
in his 60s, wasn't he? I mean, when he was still, becoming a red pill aware and coaching and coaching, but like, advising older men who are, just outside
I think he did
of
I think he did
divorce.
some scout coaching from time to time.
Mhm.
Not much, but some.
Yeah.
And yeah, I completely agree, man. Like, I wanted to actually comment that I think you nailed the fucking intro to the book.
Yeah. Well,
Speaking of
I
stuff.
don't want to, give it, I don't want to spoil it for anybody, but the foreword of the
Yeah,
book is a dedication to Andrew.
yeah, it's powerful. It stood out to me. I mean, it stood out to me not only as good content, period, but knowing him personally too.
Mhm,
But
mhm.
I think he would have loved it.
Yeah, I hope so. And like I said, that was really my intent, was to memorialize him with this, with one of my books,
Yep.
and which in the community, in the manosphere, in the red pill, community, I don't think it's any secret that my first book was probably the seminal work in red pill stuff. So,
Yeah.
if I put something out there, and trust me, this took me a good year and a half to put this thing together for the third book, and then deciding what to leave in and what to leave out is, it's a tough, it's work. It's definitely a labor of love, but
Yep.
I wanted that to be significant for him.
Yeah. Could you speak briefly to? I'm looking at your three books right now. I have them to my side, all three of them stacked up.
Mhm.
Uh, I was this morning. I was at Starbucks just looking over your book and going through it. Now that I have it, the new one,
Mhm.
and really stuck out to me. Like, and I watch you on Twitter too, and you tweet every once in a while just about writing. Something
Mhm.
you follow certain Twitter or Twitter accounts about writing.
Yeah.
Can you speak to me briefly about how fucking difficult it is sometimes to write and finish something of this magnitude? Because looking at
Uh,
your third book, I'm like, shit, man, this looks like a hard fucking task,
yeah, yeah,
like
it's
building an
thick.
event.
This is probably the most work I've put into my writing, or put into my book, because like when I put out the first book, um, there's a lot of, yeah, I don't know, I can't speak for other writers because I never really considered myself a writer per se.
Hmm.
I have another life, I have another career. I
Well,
do a lot of different things. So
these three books I'm looking at say different, buddy.
yeah, well, and that's interesting to me, because a lot of this stuff, like when I'm kind of a nomad when it comes to my career. I go from being an art director or being a promo guy or being, so I wear a lot of different hats in my real life, and to add one more to that and say, oh yeah, I'm an author as well.
Hmm.
That
Best-selling
was
author,
an interesting set, it was a very interesting step for me in my life.
best-selling fatherhood author.
But yeah,
Rollo Tomassi.
Now I am. And it's great, and it's a good feeling to know that I've got not just one but like 3 different books out there, pretty well received. So,
Yep.
and I don't know if anybody follows Mike Cernovich, but a lot of his stuff where he's talking about, he's got one really significant book, and the other one is sort of just a collection of his blog essays and stuff like that. I mean, he's got Guerrilla Mindset, and that's all great, and I'm not going to opine about that just yet. But as far as a writer is concerned, it's just really kind of having the balls to just step up and say, you know what, I'm a writer. I'm just going to go and I'm going to do it. And to, say, well, I've got something to say. And, we live in a time right now where we can do that. Because if we're just talking about just 10, maybe even 15 years ago, when the self-publishing industry was not even around, I mean, can you imagine me trying to like pitch this book to Penguin Publishing or, Simon & Schuster or something like that? That's not going to happen. And that's, and I'm still very fearful, I should say. If I have a fear about being a writer, it's not about like actually writing stuff. It's being censored by like, say, Amazon, or, having someone, complain about, oh, well, this Rollo Tomassi is just a misogynist and you shouldn't be carrying his book.
It's just hate speech.
Exactly. It's hate speech. And so therefore they won't carry you. And that's why I always tell guys to, I always say this, I make the least amount of money off of my printed books, but those are the ones that I want people to buy the most, because I put a lot of time into it, and I'm a designer and an artist by trade as it is. And I want people to have that. So it's, one thing, it's flattering to me. And second of all, it's not something you can delete. It's something that's, you can have and you can share and you can have conversations about. And, I'm very upfront about that in all of my books, and all the introductions or the afterwards, where I say, you know what, please, if you got anything out of this book, pass it on to your friend or your son or your nephew or whoever you think can benefit from this, because that's what it's all about. That's really what I think. Like when I say that the manosphere and the red pill is open source, it's open source, but it still needs to be something that we all discuss, and it needs to be something that we have engagement with and that we're talking about.
Add to and debate.
Yeah, and that's why I say, I'm really hoping that if I get on the plane in Las Vegas, so I can come out to the Orlando gig. I'm hoping I'll see some dudes on the plane with one of my books out there, and I go, okay, that's exactly where I want to be. Or if I go in and I see like around my neighborhood, we have these things called like little libraries. And so like we have these like dog walking paths and stuff like that. And I know this is all over the country, but you basically take a book that you have and you like, and you put it in there, and it's sort of like this little local community neighborhood library. And so, of course, 2 of my books are in there now. And that's the kind of thing that I actually love to see. I like it when guys like send me pictures of my books, like when a lot of them are coming in now because of the new book. But
I'm very proud to say I gave your first book, my first copy of your first book, to the groom at a wedding as a gift.
Yeah.
That's like $100 in cash. But
well, there needs to be that, and unfortunately, right now in this day and age, with what we have with feminism, and we have with social justice, and we have with the feminine imperative and feminine primary social order. When we have all of that, it's something you kind of have to keep on the down low, especially for guys you're really uncertain about too. But that's the kind of engagement I would love for guy. If there's a purpose for any of my books, it's so a red pill guy can hand it off to his blue pill friend, and they can have a talk about it. And it's not this.
I've
it's
had a habit of
blame war, or it's just back and forth like fuck you, you're a misogynist.
Yeah, I have had a habit of buying. I bought probably 2 dozen of your books so far and passed them out to people. So I've spent quite a bit on them. Just keep buying. I keep giving my own copies out, and then I got to buy more for myself. So it's like constantly.
Yeah.
They're almost like hockey pucks at this point. I'm just like flinging them out. Like everybody read them.
I like the engagement, and then that's if there's a purpose for me as a writer, it's really to spark that conversation.
Well,
I have my habits. I always keep a notebook around for ideas, because I swear to God, man, I'll be at it'll be 1 in the morning. I have a habit of like, for some reason, waking up at like 1 or 2 in the morning. And when you're free of all this distraction and all the shit that you've, done the whole day, that's when my clearest ideas really come to me. And I'm just sort of connecting
Yeah.
dots, and maybe I'm just kind of doing it subconsciously in my sleep, but I'll get up at like 2 in the morning, and, you know, until I can feel like I can go back to sleep, I'll go and write about ideas. Or, if I'm on a gig or if I'm working somewhere, I always keep it with me, because otherwise it just exit my brain, especially if I wake up in the morning, at 5 or 6 a.m. I'm about to go to the gym, I'll be like half an hour late to the gym because I was writing in my notebook. But that's one of my habits. But just, as an author now, as an author of 3 books, I find I write the most. The best I feel like my writing is in the morning. In fact, I make sure that I'm writing my blog posts in the morning these days.
Wow.
So,
Yeah, I'm definitely not doing any writing in the morning. I'm more of a late night guy. But you mentioned actually the purpose a minute ago, and that was actually what I wanted to hit on next. So in your 3rd book, right after the forward, of course, is an introduction, and you mentioned in a couple places actually, but you mentioned the purpose of your work, and so you actually then end up listing out a number of examples. I don't want to give away too much, obviously, spoiler alert. But one of the ones you mentioned, I've seen you discuss before in I think one-on-one, but also in various blog posts you've had. You mentioned the Thanksgiving dinner example, along that list of examples. Can you talk to us a little bit about that? Because that was really there was a lot of powerful examples there, but that one.
That first part of the introduction is really from a sort of a rewritten version of a post that I have called "What's My Problem?" or "What's Your Problem? What's My Problem?" And it's basically, why I bother to write about what it is that I write about,
rather than just sit on it and know it.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of that came from experiences I've had trying to talk to either friends and family, people that I've done peer counseling with when I was back at my university. Part of my psychology, I double majored in psychology and fine art, and when I was doing the psychology part, I did, it was required of me actually to do peer counseling, and it just so happened that I was also involved with the SOSWAV forums at that time. And so we were discussing all this, and I kept seeing common themes come out with the guys that I was counseling at that time. And then I sort of, started applying that to my own life and just like the experiences that I'd had, and where I've talked to, I've literally talked a friend out of suicide because, he thought his girlfriend was the one, his soulmate. He literally couldn't live without her. And that is a very common theme, unfortunately, right now. And we could probably go for a full hour just talking about male suicide and why it's 5 times the rate of women's suicide. And I could probably write a book about that.
You actually have a great quote in your post on BPD, borderline personality disorder, that the woman, you'll eat a bullet long before she will.
Yes, exactly. And that's
so true.
That's the guys that are so wrapped up, deeply wrapped up in blue pill conditioning. They believe that they'll never get anybody better than this one girl, and if they ever lost her, she's the sun and the moon and the stars in the skies to him, and if he ever lost her, he would literally die. And that is the case for a great many guys, is that they will literally put a gun to their head because they believe, or they'll either put a gun to their head or they'll kill their children and their wife and then put a gun to their own head, because faced with the idea of losing their perfect soulmate, nothing else matters. And that is back when I wrote the first book and I started even just blogging or not blogging, but just writing for SOSWAV, that was a real problem that I wanted to help guys avoid, because I think it's probably in that post too. I had a friend here in Reno way back in the day when I was going to school and everything, who was a radio DJ, and unfortunately he was not a guy I could reach, and literally blew his brains out because his girlfriend left him. And so that hit me pretty hard. And then the incident that you're talking about right now was when my and I don't really talk about this too much, but I did talk about it at the Man in Demand conference. But
Okay.
I have a sister-in-law who was married to uh, a guy who got her pregnant at 19 years old, or 18 or 19 years old. And everyone on her side of the family thought he was going to run. He was going to be one of these absentee fathers and just, I knocked her up. Oh shit, I can't have this in my life. But he didn't. He did the right thing, and the right thing, quote unquote.
Yeah.
And married her, and they even had another daughter after that, and spent a good 20 years of his life, up until he was about 40 years old. Never went to college, never did, anything really too much with his life except for support his kids, did everything that a guy is supposed to do, right? Loved his wife. He was definitely beta and definitely possessive, because his wife, my sister-in-law, she's a looker. She's a hot girl, and she's, even to this day, she's still pretty good looking. But I think on some level of consciousness, he really understood that she was above him in SMV and sexual market value. And, he's one of these guys who couldn't live without her. And so eventually she ended up meeting, just through their business, because they were running just a lodging kind of business thing. And she ended up meeting a guy who was a multimillionaire, and decided that it was time for her to divorce this guy who'd been with her for 20 plus years, who was literally building a house for her. And she decided she was going to divorce him. And within that space of time where she had announced that she was going to divorce him, and no one knew anything to the contrary, but he decided to hang himself and ended up killing himself, because he literally could not live without this woman. And so in that part of the introduction, I say it's really difficult to, I use Thanksgiving as an example, but it's very difficult to sit there and be civil as I possibly can be with a woman who
I can't even
wants to have
imagine
some sort of excuse for what is basically her hypergamous optimization, and the guy, a man is dead because of that. And it's just this obliviousness and this this cognitive dissonance.
You actually specify out too, though, that like she had plastic surgery done in a very
Oh, yeah.
short amount of time. A few of the things like that, I think.
Yeah, it was ugly, and I it's hard for me to really even talk about it, because it's it's part of my family, and it's back then it was a very really rough time for me, because again, remember, this was in 2003, so it's quite a while back now. And so, but like right around that time, that's when I'm writing for Soswav, and here I am seeing this happen, in my own family. With I've had it happen with friends. I've had at least 3 close friends who have committed suicide and are what I call casualties of the feminine imperative.
Yep.
And I've got a couple of posts. One's called Casualties, and then the other one is Soldiers, I think it is. I kind of go into how common it is for soldiers to be very, very blue pill. And they're, these are guys who've had, live ammunition shot at them, and they're pretty fearless when it comes to combat, and they're out in the field and they're on deployment and stuff. But when they get back home, they're complete and utter blue pill guys who just succumb to every, the worst, I guess, of blue pill conditioning.
Well, that's interesting, because if I'm not mistaken, from what I understand, I don't know this for certain with statistics and stuff, but military wives supposedly are some of the most or least loyal, I guess you'd put it, most highest rates of infidelity, I think.
And it's really difficult for them. I would suggest, exactly. And then it's like, and the second book I dedicated to soldiers, and because there's 22 soldiers per day kill themselves, or veterans kill themselves, and most of them are men. The vast majority of them are men, and it's difficult to talk about, but you know what? It's something that the red pill needs to address. And the suicide, I'm all about, like, the the Wounded Warriors program and that kind of stuff, and making sure that, you know, these guys get the help that they need. But there's also the part that they don't want to talk about is that these guys are very blue pill. And it doesn't seem that way, because guys will be like, well, these guys are alpha, man. They're out there shooting guns at, you know, ISIS and stuff like that. And it's like that. You just you don't understand that is compartmentalized. You know, that's something that they put in one area of their lives, and then the other side of it, you know, they don't know how to deal with it. So you got a guy that comes back from deployment. He's got PTSD, and he's also blue
Well,
pill.
it's also a lot of guys, many guys have a tendency to personalize or idealize like what alpha is to their own definitions of it. And then they look at like a Corey Worthington, you know, little 15-year-old douchebag, and they're like, oh, that's not alpha.
Yeah,
but he is alpha.
That dude's,
you know, whether or
but
not,
that dude's it.
whether or not,
But they don't understand that the alpha is a mindset, and it's an energy. For lack of a better term, it's an energy, and it's something that is, for some guys, they get it naturally and they just go out there and they've never had it conditioned out of them. And then for other guys, it's something that they have to really sort of reclaim and reconsider about themselves. And like we were just talking about before, you know, when you got red pill understanding and you've got red pill awareness, and you know, you got a basic idea of the nature of, you know, of the female, it gives you a freedom to go out and experiment and to become more of an alpha, you know.
You know, in a way, the red pill and your work in particular, it's really like learning how to handle dynamite.
Yes,
if you understand, if you understand pickup.
Yeah, we talked about that before. It's tough too, because like, again, a lot of the, and I don't want to badmouth anybody from RSD, but a lot of the guys in the pickup artist community are very blue pill.
Yeah,
they can go out there and they can get a same night lay, and they can really work it, and they can ape the behaviors and the vocal intonations and everything else, and, you know, have the energy level that makes them seem like they're alpha. But then, you know, once they get into a position where they're having to deal with multiple women, or they're having to deal with, you know, one woman in particular, because they lack that red pill understanding about, you know, what to do once, you know, what do I do once I have the girl? They get into very, you know, bad and sometimes suicidal, you know, positions for themselves. And,
you know,
I've said those guys are you know, purple pill at best. But I mean, that's not to say that there aren't some red pill pickup artists. I'm sure there are, but I think that there's a definite necessity to have an education in the red pill awareness, and then be able to apply that to game.
You know, I find it interesting being in this community, or at least the pickup community, for so long, and knowing so many dating coaches, like literally hundreds. It's interesting when they find it, the red pill specifically, or your work or not. It's interesting to watch the response to it, and like if they get into it, if they lean into it, or if they're curious, if they're instantly you know, rebellious against it, or think it's complete nonsense. One guy I saw actually that I've known for, you know, probably 5-6 years now. I think 5 years. 5 years. He had a very like angry response to it. I could just see like the absolute blue pill conditioning in it, in him, just responding to the red pill, and it was sad to see, but it's also interesting to watch the basically the aggression he had towards it, which I hadn't seen many times before.
Well, a lot of, you know, I mean, and this goes back to the Matrix movie again. A lot of people aren't ready to be unplugged. They're not ready for, you know, to hear the truths of the red pill. I always tell guys, you know, red pills, unplugging guys is dirty work, man. Especially if a guy's not ready to hear it.
Even if they have an understanding of red pill mechanics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you know, that's what's funny. It's like I have friends, I have personal friends who, like, I would never try to unplug, because I know that they're not ready for it. And it's not like, oh, well, I'll be afraid of losing my friend, which I probably would, but it's
could you repeat that? You cut out for a second.
Well, it's like I've got friends that are not ready to hear, you know, what I have to say when it comes to a lot of my personal friends are unaware that I am even writing what I write. And the reason is, you know, I keep them in the dark about it, and I have to, because they're not at a point in their lives where they're ready to accept or ready to even listen to what I have to say. And it's funny, because like these guys will say something in general about their wives or about their girlfriend or women in general, and it'll be a full-on red pill point, and I'll really want to say, you know why that is, but I pull myself back, because I know that if I go any further in that conversation, that then they'll
Mm.
think that I'm a misogynist, or that, because that's what they've been taught. Because anything
Yep.
even marginally critical of the feminine always makes a man suspect of being a misogynist. And
Yeah, it's a whole can of worms the minute you
well,
touch it.
that's part of blue pill conditioning, is to develop this hypersensitivity in men to anything that would, degrade women in any possible way. And that comes down to, really being
Mm.
critical of them, saying, why do women do this? Even asking a question. It's not like
Yep.
getting into it to the depth that I go into it. It's like just even asking a question. Why is it that
How
women
dare
do
you
this?
question
How dare you ask that?
the religion of equalism?
Or then they'll, and then of course the natural response is, what, aren't you secure in your masculinity?
Yep. What, you don't like getting pegged in the ass? Or are you not a real man?
Exactly. Yeah. Real men get pegged in the ass because they're secure enough to know that they're really not gay.
Yeah, that's even built into movies and shit, like Deadpool. I don't know if you saw that.
Yeah, I did. And it's funny. I really like Deadpool.
Yeah.
I thought that was a great movie. But yeah, exactly. And of course,
They sneak that shit in there.
he's getting pegged on International Women's Day, or something like that. And I'm like, yeah, you guys don't even understand why this is funny on so many different levels.
What you're talking about a minute ago, with even broaching a subject, even questioning something in the most basic sense. A few weeks ago, probably 2 days after I saw Goldman, actually, he was in Orlando. We hung out for a day. It was pretty awesome.
Yeah.
I went out to a birthday dinner, and a mutual friend, a good friend, who came out that night. I'd known him for many years. He had got married and had a kid now, and I haven't seen him much since that happened. But we got to talking about marriage, just very, I didn't dig into anything too deep. I just wanted to kind of hear what he thought, and I was tweeting about this, and they got a lot of retweets. But he basically listed off, like, I couldn't even dig into the conversation anymore once he got done talking, because like he hit on like every single point of what you don't want to do in a marriage. Not knowing, of course, doing it. But it was just it was interesting just to see an onslaught of bad ideas that he really believed, like genuinely believed, like all this nonsense. Just for example, like he could gain weight, get fat, and the love was unconditional. It would be no problem. Like, just, you think it would be common sense that you need to stay in shape and be healthy to be attractive to women, but even that is just drilled out of men in their 20s and 30s.
Right.
And
that's because a lot of guys on that level, they think that's kind of like their game. It's like how they earn brownie points with their wives, by being a better tool for equalism and being
better conditioned. Like a good condition I am.
Yeah, so, exactly. And they really, and I've got a dozen posts about this too, is I call that beta game. And
yeah.
Every guy that that I know, that any guy that you could go up to them and you could say, hey, what's the best way to really get with a girl? How do I get to intimacy with this girl or my wife or whatever? You can ask any dude and they will have some answer for you. They'll say, well, you gotta treat her right, man, or you gotta, make sure you get her flowers, and you gotta, different ways that they are dead set, 100% sure that is going to be the best way for you to, be ingratiated with a girl. And
even game deniers will do this. And game exists.
Yeah, 10-20% of them are red pill, and they'll tell you the actual truth. But there are guys, every dude has game, has some kind of game. How successful that game is for him is what's was questionable. But every dude has some absolute certainty what is going to work and what's not going to work. And most of the time, it's built on this, the blue pill conditioning that we keep talking about. And so they're like, I'm going to be the perfect dude, and they understand that they have a burden of performance. But they don't understand that burden of performance is colored by the blue pill.
Yeah.
And so I'm going to step up and I'm going to do better than I have this in the third book, is I'm going to do better than my dad. I call these guys promise keepers, because my dad was a son of a bitch, and my all my friends, they're misogynists, but I'm not. And I'm going to show you why. And they're going to say, oh, because I believe in equalism, and I believe in this, and I believe
I'm definitely considered the most misogynistic of all of my friends by far.
Oh, I'm sure.
Female, male, doesn't matter.
Right.
Yeah. I don't really have female friends, but I have sort of too.
Well, I'll tell you something that's really funny. Is like this was a few years back, but some of the ladies I was working with, I can remember I was at a lunch or something like that, and my wife had called me up on my cell phone. She was asking me permission to spend, X amount of money on something. I don't even remember what it was, maybe makeup or some shit.
Wow, how draconian! That's like
Yeah, exactly.
totally domineering. Something misogynistic.
So she calls me up, and and these girls, of course, are the coworkers are listening in, and they're going, "What are you? She has to call you to get permission to buy, X, Y, and Z." And I'm like, yeah. And then of course the conversation after that is, "What a son of a bitch I am," and she must be completely controlled by you, or I feel sorry for you because you're such a domineering asshole and stuff like that.
Meanwhile, they're getting wet listening to this.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Just like, no, she calls me up because that's I'm the authority in the house. I'm the primary dude, and
Yep. That's completely normal.
I don't ask permission to watch football or hockey, on my TV set like these guys, by like these women's, husbands do. And yeah, so of course, yes, of course, you're instantly, even if it's something as just as moderate as a phone call like that to check and see if something is okay, is I mean, I think there's a form of sexual abuse or of marriage abuse is defined now as a husband not giving his wife money to go and do whatever she wants. That's a form of spousal abuse right now, and at certain states.
Well, it's insidious. Insidious patriarchy is what it is.
Yeah.
So you need to get with the times, Rollo.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, and here I am. Here these women are, on their second marriages or their divorce, and I've been married for 21 years. And,
yep, oblivious to the differences in outcomes.
Yeah, exactly.
Shifting gears a little bit, so you have 2 talks coming up at the 21 convention. One on hypergamy. I guess it's your traditional talk that you've given before.
First one before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but the second one is titled "Positive Masculinity," just like your book, the subtitle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious if, since finishing the book and putting it out just a few days ago, but finally completing it and it's out, people reading it, has finishing the book influenced at all, or will it in the coming 2 months, exactly 60 days from the time of recording this?
Mm-hmm.
Has finishing the book influenced the talk?
Oh yeah, of course.
And how that'll be crafted?
That was like when I agreed to do this talk with you. In fact, I think I'm the only one doing 2 talks. But the reason I wanted, I think I even asked you if I could do 2, was because I wanted to cover this material that I was writing in the book at the time that I agreed to it. So I'm like, this would make a good talk, or I could probably expand on the book a little bit with a permanent video, I guess. So yeah, definitely. The plan of it is, I'm going to give a talk for sure, but I also want it to be kind of a workshop for guys to, because that's really the point of the book, is to come up with ideas of their own and reclaiming, masculinity in a red pill sense, or what I call conventional masculinity.
Yeah.
And I really want guys to, again, we're talking about the engagement factor of the book. That talk will be certainly a lot less structured than the hypergamy talk, but I really want to dig into some of the core aspects of the book, particularly parenting, and then the last section of the book, which is positive masculinity. And again, these are not, prescriptions. They're not like some, follow the dots, 10-point bullet point list or something like that.
Yeah.
It's just, I like to say that I give guys tools with which to use and implement in their own lives. And so that talk is going to dig into at least the first and the last chapter of the book, so that guys can, I want to definitely give an outline of, how masculinity today has been distorted and how it has been claimed by the feminine imperative and a feminine primary social order. In fact, that's really the point of the whole book.
Yeah, I love actually how you simplified it out. I'm still at the beginning, but you simplified how it's distorted.
Mm-hmm.
Either it's conventional masculinity is either perceived by the blue pill and by the majority of the population as dangerous, or it's vague, subjective, ambiguous, doesn't really mean anything.
Right.
So no matter which way they look at it, it's just crap.
And that's deliberate too. And that's why I felt like when I was writing I was editing and writing the red pill parent part is, I want, guys have always asked me, oh, well, when's the right time to give your book to my son? He's 13 now. Should I give it to him? I'm like, no. Wait till he's old enough to actually, keep it in his hands and actually read it, because the first book is some heavy freaking reading, man. But I'm trying to, give men ideas as to how they can still be a red pill parent. And, I want them to read my book, of course, but I think that there's other steps that need to happen before you say, oh, and here's Rollo Tomassi's red pill.
Well, I'm happy to say that, I think I can put this out publicly to some minimal extent. There are multiple fathers attending this year to the 21 convention to meet you specifically that want to bring their sons who are about that age.
Yeah, that's what happened at the Man to Man conference. That's actually what inspired me to write that stuff.
Wow. Yeah. I was floored to see that. I've seen that once before in the convention, but to see it now multiple times, I was like, damn.
Yeah, and it's great. And that was something that I was sort of taken aback by. I really didn't expect to see that. But I've got guys who are hitting me up for that. And I'm like, well, it's more important that you model these red pill aware, conventionally masculine, traits for your kids to follow. Boy or girl. And so that sort of led me to thinking that my point in the book is not so much to defend the red pill now. It's really to sort of help guys understand how masculinity has been distorted and how to sort of get back to that conventional masculinity and in an unapologetic way, and to be red pill and not to have to worry about like what we were just talking about, where it's like, I'm the most misogynist guy of all my friends. Well, yeah, the only reason for that is because everyone around you has been conditioned to be super hyper, sensitive to that.
Well, really, they're using the word misogynistic as a substitute for masculine.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I'm becoming, I think I'm becoming masculine to the point that I'm no longer bowing at all to the feminine imperative, and people are realizing that.
And
whether they're friends or business partners.
Yep. And that's what I go into in the book, is that it's about conventional masculinity. And I sort of shy away from the term traditional, because a lot of guys, there's a lot of cultures and a lot of ethnicities and a lot of, that would say, well, this is traditional masculinity for the Latin culture or something like that, or for whatever, the Japanese culture. And that's why I kind of wanted to just sort of, stay away from that and say, well, there are characteristics of masculinity that are unique to men. And that is what defines masculinity as a whole. Now, in the greater, larger scope of society, we see you see women trying to remove men from the language. That's one part I go into, where we want to no longer call them firemen. We need to call them fire persons. And it's really, they want to claim again that it is because of they want a sense of gender neutrality, when in fact it has nothing to do with gender neutrality. It is removing the man from the.
It's homogenizing it too.
Exactly.
Done to this blandness.
Yeah, and so you've got that's just one symptom of a larger sickness that is tearing masculinity away from male uniqueness or male ownership of the term.
And you firmly believe that there's a war on masculinity.
Oh, definitely.
In the West, right?
Yeah, and again, another reason why I focused on the red pill parent is because there is such a war going on right now to remove any sense of, masculinity or conventional masculinity, and any sense of, God forbid you be proud of being a man or be proud of being male and you're, a 9-year-old boy, right? And so there's a systematic initiative, or it's been going on for a while. I shouldn't even call it an initiative. It's a systematic
destruction,
removal of masculinity from boys right now. That's why we're boys are taught in female, girl methodology. And so we look at boys as just like defective girls because they can't sit straight. And, when you look at the stats for the amount of medication that we give to boys instead of girls when it comes to like ADHD and things like that, That's like, it's staggering, it's shocking. And we denigrate men, we turn them into ridiculous buffoons, or then or else they're hyper masculine, toxic masculinity, guys
Yep.
who are like bro culture, who are just like complete. There's nothing good to be said about men. There's nothing good about men, and there's nothing good to be said about masculinity. And so, as a result of that, kids are getting this message. Girls are getting this message that, oh boy, boys are defective, and boys are getting that message as well. But there's this empowerment initiative that goes along, what I call fempowerment, with girls, where they're giving all this special dispensation, and at the same time they're being taught that they are more powerful, and they're more unique, and they have more potential than any boy could ever have. And it it
Yep.
it transgresses, or I guess it transitions from being this message about equality, which is ostensibly what they want it to be. It's supposed to be about equality. Feminism about equality. No, it's not. It's
It's,
about feminine supremacy, is what it
yeah, I was
is,
just gonna say.
and that's what it's come to at this point. And so, to initiate that, and to keep that, to maintain that position of social dominance, we have to teach guys. We have to either teach them one or two things. Like I said, you have to teach them that masculinity is hyper and toxic, and it's hurtful, and you're a potential rapist, and there's all the super negative things that you can possibly attach to it. Or else it's ambiguous, and it comes down to
Yeah.
guys saying, well, I'm defining my own masculinity for myself. And then there's the questioning part of it too, where it's like they're questioning whether it's legitimate, or is it authentic masculinity? Is it not
Mm.
just some mask that you wear because you feel like you have to be macho all the time, right? And just me even making that voice right now, or you have to be macho. That's because we've been conditioned to think of it in a ridiculous way. We've been
You label
thinking
that as a machismo, I think you call it in your book,
yeah,
right?
my kids, yeah.
Machismo.
And yeah, and it's very ridiculous. As you think of guys who are disco kings in the '70s with big, cum catcher mustaches and stuff like that, and they've become these idiot, gay. You're either super insecure in your masculinity, or you're gay, and that's what
Yeah.
it comes down to. If guys want to get together and they want to go do stuff together, you're instantly suspected of being gay, or they want to find some way to insert the feminine influence into that all men, gathering. That's what I
Yeah.
go into in male space is it's an institutionalized, systematic insertion of the feminine into what were conventionally male spaces,
Yep.
and there's no real practical reason for it, other than they want to put overseers in the locker room. They want to have, women to, uh, oversee the conversation. I mean, you see that. I don't know if whenever I talk about overseers in the locker room, I instantly think of ESPN right now, because ESPN has become so feminized and so just rife with social justice warriors. We got like some butch lesbian on. I forget. I think it's called First Take or something like that, where it's a
Okay.
sports show, and there's two guys going back and forth. It's Stephen A. Smith, and I forget the other guy's name. And then they've got one woman in the middle of it who's sort of giving her perspective and saying, oh, well, I'm here to balance these two guys out. And she has no function there except for to be an overseer in the locker room. And
Yep.
that's applicable to so many different social situations, whether it's, guys at a game store, or, guys in a working condition, or there's, what is it, the work culture, things like that.
Yeah.
Even the boys club, we allow girls into the boys club, or allow girls into the Boy Scouts too.
Well, the Boy Scouts, I was gonna say, they were trying to get girls in the Boy Scouts.
Yeah, but
It's
they,
crazy.
yeah, that's okay, but it's not okay to, have it the other way around.
Yeah. Well, it's also okay for 4-year-old boys to decide their own gender and then get, drugs and stuff.
Yeah, well, that's again, that's wanting to remove the masculine. It's gotten to the point where the feminine imperative is so desperate to remove masculinity from the culture that they will literally, convince 4-year-old boys, or could try to convince society, I guess, that 4-year-old boys and 4-year-old girls, to a lesser degree, can, choose their own gender identity at that
Yeah.
young an age, and to the point where it's like, we're going to give you hormone inhibitors so that you never really go through puberty. Puberty is an option. I think I saw
Yep.
billboards and something like that. And it's
Yeah, and
just,
opposing this,
and
I
for
think you can get
no,
fired in Canada now.
exactly. And again, exactly. If you, in Canada, if you disagree with that assessment and you inhibit your son or daughter from, their gender choices, they can send in, child protective services and take the child away from you. That is the degree
Yep.
to which, well, certainly Canadian society, but that's the degree to, larger Western society has. That's how fearful they are that masculinity might be propagated in
Well,
society.
that's how far they're willing to go to legislate, the feminine imperative and
Right.
force it through the government right down your throat.
Right. Whether it's divorce laws, whether it's, abortion laws, whether it's, even just, marriage customs, things like that. There's so many different ways and so many different levels that the exit and the erasure of masculinity is apparent. I mean, like I was just saying, they want to erase man from all the bylaws in I forget which college it was, but I mentioned that in the book as well. But
There's
this
a little
is
state government. It was
state
Wisconsin.
governments, where they want to
Yeah.
erase
Yep.
men from the language, and
Yep.
so you
Rewrite
see
all the statutes. It's nuts.
you see it, and you see it, erasing masculinity and erasing men from the language, from
Yeah.
being able to, decide their own gender from as young as 4 years old.
It's Orwellian, man.
Yeah, and
The
so
erasure like that.
exactly, and then we have like, we think of them as like laughable, cutesy little things like mansplaining, right? Well, that is again removing men from the language. It's removing their influence from any kind of discourse. I think I've tweeted a few times about how feminists are saying that science itself is too overtly masculine and it doesn't take into account
I've seen that. Yeah.
feminists' sensitivities and sensibilities. And it's like, it's fucking science. It's objective. It's supposed to be objective.
Math is way too masculine.
But now, because, well, the truth of pretty much, our reality is masculine, and they want to remove that,
Yeah. Well,
so anyway, that's the point of the book, really.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned women in the locker room and monitoring. So speaking of that, have your wife and daughter read the book yet? I was looking on Amazon. I didn't see the reviews, the 5 stars yet. So what's going on there?
My wife and daughter, it's interesting because there is actually original content in the book. I wrote a section called Raising Daughters, and
Okay.
I talked to my daughter and my wife about that as I was writing it, and just sort of bouncing ideas off of them, and saying what is it that I do? What behaviors do you notice about me that have you think are a positive influence on your life? That kind of stuff. So yeah, they've written sections of it.
Cool.
Like I said, it's just out in the wild right now, and it's a pretty heavy read. So my daughter actually, it's funny she mentioned that. My daughter's 19, and she actually loves my work. She really, because she has to deal with because she's on campus. She's at a major university right now, and I every once in a while I'll go visit her at her dorm or whatever. And in the hallways, it's just nothing but this litany of feminist, pro-female propaganda on every little billboard, and every meetup is like, what can we do to be, to erase men from society, and it's either that or it's like the back in January when Hillary lost the election, it was all about the ostensibly
Marches.
it was the March for Freedom, but it was really the Women's March is what it was. And then on Women's Day, back in March, I think it was, there's another march. And
I'm sure there'll be a few more.
And I think that if I have imparted any really lasting red pill wisdom into my daughter, it's been that she's very sensitive to seeing that kind of shit, on the walls. And she gets into, not fights, but she gets into some pretty heated debates with some of the girls that she, is either rooming with or that she has to deal with. And she is, you're going to laugh, she's a journalism major too. So,
nice.
but she has my red pill sensibilities. And so she sees a lot of this through her, I don't say limited, but her red pill lens. And so I think when it comes with regard to them, it's, my wife and my daughter, they're all on board with it. I mean, my wife is, she occasionally reads a blog post that I put down. If I say, hey, you should check this out, she'll sit down and she'll read it. And then we'll talk about it a little bit. But it's, she's certainly not influencing my red pill, observations, but I like to sometimes bounce ideas off of her because she's a very, I'll say traditional, but she's very conventionally feminine woman. My father-in-law is a very, very solid alpha. And
nice.
She grew up under, under Texas alpha laws. She was very, very, and her brother also, I should say, was very alpha too. So there's, I kind of got lucky in that sense that what I write about, I don't have a feminist for wife. Just, it's nice. But I
can't imagine that going
getting back to your question though, is as of this conversation we're having right now, I have the #1 best-selling book on Amazon for the fatherhood subsection, I guess. Yeah, they make you like decide what section you want to put your book in, so people know that what they're looking for. But I have the #1 best-selling book in fatherhood on Amazon. I have the #2 best-selling book for raising boys, of all things, on Amazon, and I have the #5 selling book in family relationships, and then fatherhood is the subcategory for that. And when I saw that today, I was like, wow, that it didn't really hit me that the red pill parent side of that really is hitting home with people right now.
Yeah, I'm curious to see too how that plays out over time. As I'm sure you're not the only person who's noticed that.
I don't know. I'm going to end up. I expect that because of that, because I'm up there. And if you look at some of the other titles that are around there, they're almost all of them are written by women, or they're written from a very pro-feminine, from a guy, but a very blue pill guy perspective. And just to have mine up there amongst all the rest of these, I'm sure it's going to cause some sort of either outrage, or it's going, I'm like what we were just talking about before. My greatest fear as a writer is having Amazon delete my stuff, and when I see that, it makes me proud, but it also kind of sends a chill down my spine, like, oh shit, this might start a fire of some sort. So.
Yeah. Well, we'll have plenty of the books, I think, at the 21 convention this year, so that'll be good. And live armed security for you. So
yeah, go. Great. Did you want to get to any questions?
Yeah, I actually wanted to shift off that. Yeah, you need to go in about 10 minutes.
I can stick around for another half hour.
Okay. Yeah, we got a lot of guys listening in, including Sam Boda has been here since the beginning.
Awesome.
I think he's still here. Yep.
Yay.
So yeah, let's get into some. I have some pre-written ones, and we'll have live ones too. We have a whole bunch.
Cool.
Here we go. If women never want full disclosure, what are the top 3 things that a man should never disclose, and why?
Well, I have one of the rules, the iron rules of Tomassi, is never tell a woman how many women you have actually been with in your past.
Okay.
Always allow that to be a source of passive dread, rather than, because I get guys that, and I'm guilty of this myself in my past. I get guys who say, well, why can't I tell her that I've slept with X amount of women? First of all, that sort of makes you sound like you're popping off, and it's sort of a bluster that women, especially in a blue pill conditioned society, expect. Is they expect this overreach, I guess, of guys expecting to be studs all the time. What's the, I forget the double standard is, if a guy has a whole bunch of sexual partners, he's a stud, but if a woman has it, then she's a slut. Well, that's because men and women are different, and there are different prerequisites for each one's sexual strategy. And then there's, different psychologies.
Yeah, Black Label Logic talks a lot about this in his book, Gendernomics. He goes into the differences between the values and how they progress over time.
And
Similar to you, of course.
I think that a lot of beta guys, or I'm saying beta, but guys who, even red pill guys who are, who believe that that's a selling point for them. They think that that should be part of their game to say, well, I've been with, 20 girls and so. And then they go into details about, who was the best and who get the best blowjob or whatever.
Yeah.
And I really don't think that first of all, you're putting too much information out there to begin with, because remember that stoking a woman's imagination is your single best tool in your, red pill pickup artist tool set.
I was thinking that here too, that you're interrupting her imagination process, her imagining process.
Right. So that's one thing I would tell guys to not disclose. Running down a list here of things. I think just in general, guys need to clam up about some things, particularly when guys who are very beta guys like to spill out their entire life story on the first date when they're out there, and they expect to go because they're so uncomfortable with the flow of a date or the flow of getting to know a woman. I think that they feel that they need to bypass the sexual urgency and the sexual tension phases, and they need to get straight to rapport. They need to get straight to the comfort side, because they believe that the only way a woman will be sexual with you is if she's comfortable with you, because they've heard countless times that, I'm going to make you wait to have sex because I need to be comfortable with you first.
Well, let me ask you a very specific tangent question here. How much comfort does a woman need at minimum to sleep with a man?
I don't believe that a woman really even needs to be comfortable with a man.
So zero, basically.
I'm sure there's a lot of pickup artists that will disagree with me. I think there needs to be some sort of comfort, at least in a trust to the degree that she's not going to get raped, she's not going to get hurt. But I think guys put too much emphasis on comfort and rapport, and they need to focus a little bit more on pumping up. Pickup artists like to call it buying temperature. But I think really buying temperature sort of translates to sexual urgency and sexual tension.
It's the old foam can party. I love the analogy. I love that.
Exactly. There's guys who will sit and wait for a woman to be sexual with him because she's convinced him that she needs to be comfortable with him, so much so, but yet she's happy and eager to go have sex with a guy on spring break in the foam cannon party in Cancun.
Yeah, in 10 minutes.
And within 10 minutes, same night lay kind of thing. Because, and I think we've discussed this before. I've had some of my, listened to some of my poor girls talking about, would you ever sleep with a guy on the first date? And their response is, not if I thought he was relationship material. meaning that they'd be happy to sleep with an alpha guy on the same night if they thought that it was, urgent enough for them to do so. But if they met a nice guy who's sweet and has relationship potential, she's going to make that guy wait for X amount of dates or X amount of months, whatever, and try to convince him that she needs to feel comfortable, when in fact she's more than happy to go and have sex on a short-term urgent, level with a guy who's, an alpha enough to really, set off her cues and set off her triggers.
Rollo, I never told you this, I think. Maybe a little bit through Twitter, but my record before finding the red pill for hooking up with a woman, so full sex, was like an hour. And since finding the red pill and since finding your work, I've gotten it down a few times to less than 15 minutes from meet to close.
Yeah, and that's
stone sober both times.
That's good too. I think
that's rare, but
I think that in today, I can only relate back to when I was in my single days, and we're talking, 20 plus years ago. But I can remember times when, and this really, I didn't know it at the time, but it was giving me sort of a red pill education. But I can remember times when this is a true story. I was playing in bands in the Hollywood, rock scene back in the day, and I had a girl hit me up from one of the flyers for our bands that was out, and I happened to have my phone number on there, and she called me, and I didn't know who she was. I didn't, whatever. But she sounded kind of cute, right? Where you get that sort of, oh, well, she has that kind of vocal intonations where she sounds kind of cute, because this is back in the day. There's no internet. There's no cell phone. And so
let's check your Instagram.
So yeah, right. Well, I couldn't do that, right? So I said, hey, why don't I meet you at such and such a gig? And I met her there, and she was fucking smoking hot. And like within, I don't know, half an hour, I guess, we were going at it. And that was one of the experiences that taught me that you don't have to have quite as much comfort as women would like you to believe, because sexuality from a woman's perspective is really based on urgency, and it comes down once again. And I'll go over this in my talk on hypergamy. I'll say it right this time. Is that there's alpha fucks and there's beta bucks, and if the urgency is enough for a woman to fuck a guy, and she's in her proliferative phase of her menstrual cycle, and she's really actually, she doesn't even need to be in that. If the guy represents that high a value sexual prospect to her, she's not going to wait. She's not going to say, oh, well, he's relationship material, I better put him off.
Her hindbrain is screaming, get his genetic material.
And I think a lot of guys really need to understand that, when it comes to short-term sexual breeding potential and long-term provisioning potential, those are two different animals. And I also separate that too. It's like women will love to tell you what they find attractive in a man, but they kind of shy away when they say what's arousing to them in a man. And
I think shy away is an understatement. They really don't want to get it out there. I post stuff like this all the time on Facebook, and people get fucking livid, man.
There's a definite distinction that needs to be made between when a woman says she's aroused by something and she's attracted to something. And that's one of the biggest mistakes that blue pill guys, or guys just trying to unplug, really understand, because they go by what a woman says. And what a woman says she finds attractive in a guy is never going to be the same as what she finds arousing. Yeah. Because they come from two different needs.
Yeah. Well, it's also what she's saying is probably a lot more heavily mixed with blue pill conditioning than the feeling she experiences.
Well, yeah, because it sounds right. Because it sounds, she's comfortable. What's attractive, sure, because that means she is motherhood potential, and she's like, well, I need a guy who's funny and a guy who's confident, and I need
but not overconfident, not too much.
Exactly. And so if you go and you look at any woman's dating profile on like Plenty of Fish or whatever, name the online dating system, you will see a litany, or just a laundry list of attraction cues, attraction potential, not what makes them arousing. You want to know what women find arousing? Go look on Tinder.
Yeah, dude, I need to show you my Tinder profile. Have I shown it to you, the bio?
I don't think so.
I was shown to Black Label Logic a few weeks ago, and he was like, holy shit. I'll send it to you. I'll send it to you after the call. It's the antithesis of those fucking bullet points, and it gets me laid. Women hit me up about it, not every time, but frequently.
Right. Just to finish the last of the question, I think one of the other things that guys should not discuss with a woman is game, and should not discuss red pill principles with them. And I know sometimes that seems a little counterintuitive, but women want to play the game. They don't want to be told that they are playing a game.
And no, I get flack for this frequently from some of my plates, because I post all this on my Facebook, knowing the consequences that a lot of times I'll lose plates from this. But to me, it's more important to post it.
Yeah, well, I have a post called "Secret of the Red Pill," and I tell guys, I said, if you're going to discuss red pill principles with a woman, don't pretend that you're going to get laid, or don't use that as part of your game by explaining it to them, because they would. Like I said, they like truth, but they don't want full disclosure. And if you explain, if you explicate game and red pill principles to a woman, you're explaining it to them. You're getting scientific. You're getting a big head.
Yep. Yeah, it's a nuisance to them. Yeah. Next question. This is an interesting one, and then we'll get to a lot of live ones too. Okay. Should a man ever withhold sex? If so, can you give some examples of when a man should do this?
I think so. I think that it can be used as a game tactic to withhold sex. And I occasionally see posts about this on game blogs, and certainly Royce's talked about it a few times. I think that it's only effective when the guy is such a high value man that it turns the it flips the sexual script for her. If a guy says, if a guy's saying, well, I'm going to make you wait, or I'm not really into it right now, or it's really fucked up if you've got a fuck buddy, and you say, no, I don't think so, not today. Especially after you've been having sex with her 4 or 5 times. Before that, and basically it's just friends with benefits kind of thing. You really want to fuck with a woman's mind. You have a fuck buddy, and you turn them down. That is, that messes with them. But I think that it can be an effective tactic, but it's only useful if you are seen as such a high value alpha prospect to a woman that it would make her question her own self-esteem. And
so like again, a demonstration of power, basically.
It is, because what is the single most driving force in most men's lives is sex. So that's why we go to strip clubs. That's why we pay for prostitutes. That's why why we learn game, initially anyways. Is because sex is that important. It's that imperative to us. People ask me what the masculine imperative is, and I say it's unlimited access to unlimited sexuality. That is men's imperative.
Yep.
And everything else that comes back from that, there's a lot of really good positive things that come out of that, because men will build bridges and pyramids and castles because, they're rechanneling that energy. But when you say to a woman, yes, this is the most important thing, or the most driving impulse in my life, and well, I don't think I really want to do it with you. And she understands that, that will mess with the woman's head. And that's the real principle behind that tactic, is to make a woman second guess. And it's actually also a form of passive dread, assuming you do it right. If you go, no, fuck you, bitch, I'm not going to have sex with you, that's overt dread. But if you just say, I'm not really feeling it tonight, that's passive dread, because you can, then it makes you something to unravel. Then it makes her ask questions.
She also thinks you're probably banging another girl, or she'll imagine that that's one of the major possibilities.
Right? Yeah. Then it's exactly, because it stokes competition anxiety.
I do that shit all the time, dude.
Well, especially when, like, if it's obviously if it's the first time you're having sex with a girl and you turn her down, that says one message. But if you've had sex with a girl 3 or 4 or 5 times before, and then you turn her down, or maybe 100 times you turn her down, that says another message.
Yep. I've done it. I did this with Medusa once, actually, and I'll never forget the terror I saw in her eyes when I did it. It was, she obviously has a range of personality disorders, but I think that definitely is something I'll see again in a woman who's not disordered. Just that total devalidation like that.
The other question that I get, it's funny, is I actually field this question from mostly the guys on the Married Red Pill forum. Should I withhold sex from my wife? Well, it only matters if your wife would care if you did.
Exactly. Yep.
And if that would indicate that there's something wrong, or that maybe you don't find her as attractive as you used to, and you're like using it as a form of passive dread, that's one thing. But if she could give a shit whether or not you want to or not, it's not the game technique that you think it is.
Yep.
Yeah.
Let's move on to some live questions.
Okay.
More on the sex stuff from Liam Cregan. To Rollo, how important to women is penis size really? And I know you have a blog post about this too.
Yes,
one of the only guys in the manosphere, probably.
Yeah, well, I don't shy away from anything. The size issue. I have a blog post called Size Matters, and that's probably the best way, or the best. If you want a more in-depth answer to this question, that's the post you want to read. However, I will say this, is that from an evolutionary psychology perspective, yes, size does matter. We're constantly told, particularly now that we're supposedly living in this egalitarian, equalist, utopia, that it's not the size that matters, it's the magic.
Motion of the ocean.
Yeah, motion of the ocean, or it's it's not the size of the wand, it's the magician, right? That kind of shit.
Yeah.
That shit is just to make guys feel better about their size. And honestly,
Well, wait a second.
if you watch porn all day long, you're gonna go, fuck, man, I'm not all that big,
Yeah. But
But
wait, hang on a second though. Wouldn't this also not just be used to placate guys, but also to mystify or what do you call it? Obstruf. I don't know, I forget.
yeah,
I can't even say the word.
obfuscate. Yes.
Obfuscate the importance of size, so that men who are better equipped don't really know it, or don't really know how to leverage it.
Right. Well,
So there's two angles to that, right?
Well, and it really kind of comes back again to what's arousing and what's attractive, like we were talking about before. If a guy, it's depending on where a woman is, I guess, in her phases of maturity, if she needs the provisioning potential of a guy, and he's not quite as arousing as another guy would be. They're going to start looking for social conventions to make sure that that guy, they're basically feeding that guy's ego so that he doesn't feel like he's, impotent or insufficient for her, because she needs, resources from him. She needs some kind of something that he can provide. Whereas, like, for instance, like I was just talking about, like back in my, rock star 20s, I didn't have two nickels to rub together, but I was getting laid all the time because I had the look, I had a little bit of social proof, I had some pre-selection, and I also had a beat up pickup and a one-room studio in North Hollywood. So,
you served a specific purpose for them.
Yes, yeah, because that was the alpha fuck side of the hypergamy equation, and so the beta buck side of that is where you get social conventions like women saying, "Oh, it's your dick is just fine the way it is," whereas if you look at if you listen to women's private conversations, if you look at what their Tinder profiles say, if you look at over listen to the conversation of them when they're being candid with their girlfriends.
Yeah.
Yes, size does matter. In fact, the reason I know that size matters is because it's the first thing women will use against a guy if they want to deflate him, or they want to deflate his ego. They'll say, if you went like, it's funny. I drive a Hummer H3, and I bought it about 4 years ago. And the first thing the girls on Facebook said when I posted a picture of it, they go, "Oh, you must have a little dick," or it wasn't even like that directly. It was just like aspersions, like, "Oh, I'm sorry you had to feel like you had to do that," meaning you're compensating for something, right?
I've seen this with Corvettes, but a Hummer?
Yeah, exactly. But yes, that's funny. But that was the first and very predictable insult that you're going to get. Or they're just like these little, there's these little jabs, and they're all jabs at, well, you only, like guys with big giant trucks. If you go and you buy a Ford, F250, or whatever those things are. These gigantic trucks that are just the side of a tractor trailer, right? The first thing people are going to say is, "Oh, you must be compensating for something." And well, that is the reason for that is because size actually does matter. And if it didn't matter, it wouldn't be an insult.
Yeah. I think you might find this interesting too. I'm not sure if you're aware of this. I was aware of this before I read the Size Matters post, and I don't know if you put it in there. Mm-hmm. It's something you would have, though, I think, if you're aware of it. So from what I understand, there are a few studies that have been done on pretty good populations, like, sample size. Mm-hmm. And apparently women, well, this may not be too surprising to you, they differentiate. So they'll say size matters in these studies somehow. And then the woman will say, basically for long-term provider type, for boyfriend type, they want it like a bit smaller. Mm-hmm. And if the guy is not for that purpose, they want it bigger. Right. So they'll throw out some number like 7 inches or something for the alpha guy. Right. And then for a long-term boyfriend type, they want 5 or something like that. They want it like more average.
Yeah, there's some sexual psychologists and sexual scientists that I follow on Twitter, and every once in a while they'll post like some some talks that they happen to go to, like there's an international, sex psychologists convention or something like that, or they'll go into, the statistics of, what size actually means to women. And, there's a reason that we have, like, Japan has like penis day or something like that, where like they have a big parade with nothing but these gigantic dicks.
I've seen that. Yeah.
And then when you look even on remember International Women's Day, where guys are dressing up as big or girls are dressing up as like gigantic vaginas,
Yeah.
And it's like
Men
when
too.
when you look at that, and you look at if you look at phallic symbols throughout different cultures and ethnicities, there is something that is important about a large schlong, to put it bluntly. I mean, it implies, at least subconsciously, that there is sexual prowess behind that.
Yeah.
So it would make sense, I think, that women wanting a provider type would, I don't know, maybe they don't desire it, but maybe they expect it from to have, a provider type to have a smaller cock.
Yeah, it was interesting to me because it just looked like it lined up too well. Like it was too good to be true that they would actually want that, and they probably want bigger, but for that guy, they want to have him be less powerful or whatever.
And again, I always have to put this caveat out there. It's like whenever I talk about hypergamy, or if I talk about like, the other thing is, probably the likely question is, do women like tall guys? With the answer, it's yes, of course they do. But again, don't let that get in the way of you utilizing game to overcome your deficits. Whether you've got, an average dick, or you happen to be 4'7" or 5'7", or you think that, I can't get laid because she's in the wrong phase of her ovulatory, don't let that, the information that I put out there is in no way meant to dissuade you from, putting your best foot forward when it comes to game, because game works.
Yep. Yeah, it's about acquiring the knowledge and then doing the best you can with it based on, where you started.
I look at some of the guys in RSD, and if they're telling the truth, I look at some of the dudes there and I go, oh my God, what girl's going to go out with that guy?
There's one fat guy that's notorious for that. I think it was
what was it? It was in Dataclysm. The stat was that most women, like 85% of women, find like most men unattractive. There's very that physically attractive. Most women find most men unattractive.
Okay, Cupid's done studies on this repeatedly using their website.
Yeah, that was it. That was Dataclysm. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, it comes out.
Don't let that be a hindrance to you. They're still somebody's fucking those girls.
Yeah. Well, Rollo, though, it's it's men who have unrealistic beauty standards for women, not the other way around. So get your shit straight. We got one more question here. It's from Aidita Kataria. I don't know if I think it's a guy. Hi, Rollo. I'm so excited to read about your new book. My question is to all the fathers: is there any way we can prevent bad social conditioning or lessen it with your children? He says he's 21, not married, but I'm guessing in the future he wants a kid.
Yes, there is, and then I go into pretty good detail of that in the first part of the new book.
Okay.
I'm like I said, I don't give prescriptions, but as close as I come to giving prescriptions, they're in that book. I actually have about a 31 or 32 bullet point list of things to be aware of or things you can institute in your relationship with your son in the book. And I have to give a hat tip to some of the guys on the Red Pill Reddit forum for helping me out with that.
Okay.
But yes, there is. And what I think probably the most important thing for guys who are fathers or who want to become fathers need to be aware of, first of all, you need to be Red Pill aware, and you need to be unplugged, and you need to have instituted and internalized that awareness in your life so that it is second nature to you. That is the most important thing I think that Red Pill fathers need to understand, because very similar.
Leading by example, basically.
Yeah, exactly. Well, lead by example, but you have to be that example before you can lead it. So, like I tell guys, like if you decide you want to get into a long-term relationship with a woman, the frame that you enter into that relationship with is going to be the one that sets the tone for that relationship for the better part of that relationship, unless you really completely backslide into blue pill.
Yeah.
If if you never were the guy that you sold yourself as, that's going to be bad for you. But the same principle applies for children too, for kids. It's like you need to have that solid frame before you even have kids. And so the frame that you enter into with your children as an authoritative parent needs to be set in stone before you, I would say before you even have it. But like a lot of guys come to the red pill while they are married and while they are awakened while married, and they suddenly realize that, you know, the red pill is true, and they understand feminine nature, but they're so far gone with their kids that they don't know what to do about it. I give you some ideas in the third book about that as well. But so that being said, let's just say, for sake of argument, you are red pill and you do have a good solid frame. You need to be aware of how the feminine imperative, and in this case, I call it the village. Remember how they, I think it's Hillary Clinton or somebody else was saying that it takes a village to raise a child.
Oh, it was a CNN anchor, I think, that did some
So it takes a village to raise a child. Well, I think the village in this case is the feminine imperative and the blue pill.
Yeah.
And so if you are not going to be raising your kid, or if you don't instill, you know, red pill awareness or parent from a red pill aware perspective, the village will definitely be happy to parent for you. And that's when we see, like we were just talking about earlier, that's when we see sons being taught to gender loathe, meaning that they hate being male, because it's better to be female, and we need to transition into being, if we're not going to transition into being a binary girl, then we need to make ourselves more acceptable and more accommodating for the feminine, and we need to be more supportive. And we need to
the gender loathing is particularly
loathing.
It's insidious, man. Like you were commenting about it with Mark Manson,
Mhm.
a blogger not too long ago, and that was, I know him.
Mhm.
I met him personally, you know, at the convention years ago, and just to see that, it's fucking sick, man.
It is, and to see
I can't even imagine having a kid do that. Like,
he's got a. And Mark, I've never had any love for Mark Manson. And a lot of people, wonder why I don't, and because he put out his book Models.
Yeah.
Gosh, I don't know, back in 2011 or something like that.
Attract women through honesty.
Yeah, and
just be honest, bro.
It's really basically just be yourself game. And I took him to task for vulnerability, because he seems to think that that's a selling point, or that, just a default sense of vulnerability for a man. Like he buys into the idea that vulnerability is strength, and it is not strength.
Yeah, this is popular in the PUA field. This is old school stuff.
It is, and that goes back to vulnerability. But the thing is, the only reason that he understands that, or the reason he thinks that vulnerability is strength, is because that is what boys are taught from a very early age, that they need to be more in touch with their emotions. They need to be more expressive. They need to be more sensitive, supportive of of the female side of them. And I have a real big problem with Carl Jung in that sense. And a lot of people take me to task for that, but I have no love for Mark Manson. I have no love for Carl Jung, but the reason that you get things like that, and Mark just had a recent post called "The Problem with Men," which is just this blue pill
right out of the gate.
And of course, he's doing this right after he's gotten married, and
what a coincidence!
Yeah, just like Tucker Max, his message changes.
Yep.
And anybody who thinks I'm being unfair to Mark, I just go read that one, and then read he has one called "The Problem with Men" and something about feminism. They're like some of his most recent posts.
Yeah.
And you will understand exactly the problem that I have with him. But I think that getting back to the question again, is I think that red pill fathers need to be aware of that influence. That's how a Mark Manson gets made. And that's how a blue pill guy gets made. And that's how guys who put guns to their heads because they think that their girl is their soulmate, that's how those guys get made. They get
or the guys who walk into an LA Fitness and shoot the place up.
Exactly. Those are the guys who at 5 years old were taught to gender loathe and taught to pedestalize not just a woman, but women in general. And I talk about that a little bit in the book too, is that guys, we always in the community, we always tell guys, you need to take that woman off the pedestal. The reason you have one-itis is because she's on the pedestal. Well, it's not just that woman, it's women in general. It's like you've been taught to always put women on top of that pedestal. And I say this in the parenting section too, boys are taught to not make themselves their own mental point of origin. They are taught to make women their mental point of origin.
They're taught to sacrifice. They're taught to destroy themselves, basically.
Exactly. And we've already got that impulse in us, naturally anyways, is to be disposable, to be expendable. We already have that as a natural impulse for us, is, to be altruistic as it is. But the feminine imperative takes that and then applies it to women themselves. And then thus we have 80%, 90% of betas who are pedestalizing womankind, and not just a particular woman, not their mothers, not their one-eyedest girlfriend, but just women in general. And I would suggest that guys need to take that womankind off of the pedestal and put themselves on the pedestal, and to make themselves their own mental point of origin, because from the time they were 5 years old, they were taught not to do that.
Well spoken. I want to wrap up with 2 simple questions.
Okay.
Number 1, it's been on my mind for a little while. Do you think it's a worthwhile goal to make the majority of the population over the coming decades red pill aware? As of right now, you mentioned earlier percentages. No more than 10 to 20% of the population is red pill aware in any sense. So is it worthwhile to shift that?
Well, obviously, if I'm writing about it, I think it's I think it's a worthwhile goal. I don't think that that's ever going to happen, though, to be honest with you.
Okay.
I would love for more men to become more red pill aware, to save their own lives and to live better lives. I have like that. We were just discussing that one post about confidence in the safety net, and in that post, I just sort of petitioned some guys so I could have some testimonials put on the back of my book to say, hey, what has the red pill done for you, and how has it improved your life, or maybe it hasn't improved your life, but how has it changed your life? And I've got over 1,000 comments on that one post from guys that they might be their first time posting. They're lurking there, and they come out of lurking to tell me, you changed my life, you saved my life, you brought me back from the brink of suicide. So even if the majority of guys don't become pickup artists and use game or whatever, or they aren't doing anything with it per se, just to have them red pill aware enough that it changes their life for the better, or saves their life, from suicide or whatever. That to me is a worthwhile goal. Like I said in the introduction, we were just talking about, why do I bother? Well, if there's a reason why I bother, it's the main reason is to save guys' lives, is to make, help them, provide them with information and actionable education to change their lives with. And I think I'm succeeding at that so far.
No, totally. And you mean that one man at a time too, on an individual level.
Yes, and that's the other thing. Is like, I'm only one guy, and I can only write one book at a time. That's one of the reasons, like I say, engagement with my writing and helping guys share. I'm always happy to say, or happy to read when guys tell me that they passed their book on to somebody who really needed it. That's great, because that's the only way that it works. I am of the opinion, and everybody knows this about me, that I'm a bottom-up approach to changing men's lives. I know the MRAs and a lot of other people would like to take the top-down approach, where they're going to go change legislation, and there's something to be said about that, but it's not going to happen for them unless you can change men on an individual level to actually initiate that kind of social change. And I really think that, like I said, unplugging guys is like triage. You have to save the ones you can and read Last Rites to the Dying, and then move on to the next guy. And hopefully you've instilled something in a guy. There's guys that I have talked to who like I was saying before, will never become red pill aware, or they'll never leave their blue pill idealism. But because I talk to them, and because I made them red pill aware, they see it going on around them all the time. And in some ways, I have to be really careful with that, because I know I might be fucking that guy's life up, and his delusions that keep him alive. And I say, hey, women are really like this, and they go, no, they're not. You're a misogynist. Fuck you. And then 2 weeks later, they see in their lives exactly what I just said.
Yep.
So, yeah.
Okay. Final question then will be, since I last spoke to you on this podcast, we've added 4 speakers to the convention. including Alan Roger Curry, the Family Alpha, and Ivan Throne, I think is how you say his last name, and more recently Joe Navarro, former FBI agent. The first three in particular, though, you were very well versed with. So,
yeah, I think I was the one who suggested they come on.
Yeah, I think Alan Roger Curry was going to happen either way at some point. He'd filed the convention for a long time apparently, but the other two were very much recommended by all of them recommended by you.
Yeah, I think that's going to be. I'm really looking for. I mean, I'm looking forward to meeting all these guys, of course. But I think with the new book out, I'm really looking forward to meeting Family Alpha because some of his writing has actually inspired a few of the ideas that were in the Red Pill Parenting section of the third book.
Cool.
Yeah. And yes, and I have a list of credits that are in the back. Like I have some acknowledgments that are in the back of the book, and he's one of them. And I believe I put the 21 convention on there as well.
Oh, cool! Badass.
So yeah, immortalize everybody, right?
Yep. Well, Rollo, it's been a pleasure having you on. I look forward to meeting you in just about 2 months.
Always a good talk.
Yep. So guys, thanks for tuning in live. Appreciate it very much. If you watched the recording, thanks for that too. Smash the like button, leave a comment, and make sure you visit Rollo at therationalmale.com. Also, you can meet him live at the 21 Convention 2017 10-year anniversary coming up this September in Florida. You can get tickets on his website, therationalmale.com. There's a link. Also directly at the21convention.org and in the link underneath this video.
And this is the
Rollo, thanks a lot, man.
And the price of that's going up pretty soon, right? Because it's the end of the month.
Yeah, that's right. Duh. Oh man, there's been so much on my mind. Yeah, so as of the recordings, the live right now, the price goes up in 2 days. So your last chance to save $300 on your ticket is right now. That ends on August 1st. And then you have till the end of August to save $200. So till August 31st.
And I have a direct banner link to that from my site too.
Yep, absolutely. Yep. Yeah, and we're running out of tickets too. We have about 32 left, I think.
All right.
I got to check. So we might sell out, which would be pretty badass.
Great.
So, yes, sir.
Okay.
Rollo, thanks a lot. I'm gonna hit the
stop.
Yeah. All right. See you guys.
See ya. Bye.
You can stay on. I'm gonna.
I will. Yeah.